is over there. We're going to all be putting over at the table. Wasn't sure what to expect. Just bring yours over when you're ready, because we have such a limited time. If you'll write down your most challenging moment when trying to get a student motivated to write. I have tons of stories about students that have told me, oh, I don't want to write. No, I'm not going to write. I was back the year before I came to the writing project. I was a teacher thrown into a class of students that didn't want to be in an intervention for writing. And they looked at me and they said, I don't write. I'm not going to write. I said, oh, okay. So we got acquainted and we had some activities that we did together. And one of the students just was a special needs student, and he truly had a hard time scribing, not just putting his ideas on paper, but actually writing. And so we team wrote to start out with. And it started with one word, went to two, went to a sentence, finally 2 paragraphs, and that young man did a journal entry every day by himself after that. But it took that first little bit to get him going. Another student looked at me and he said, I'm just not going to write. You can't make me. And I said, well, then what am I going to read that has to do with you? He said, what do you mean? Well, you want to read what I wrote? And I said, of course I do. That's why we're here. And he said, oh, well, I don't write essays. Okay. So where do you find writing? And he looked at me and he said, I don't know. I said, what do you like to do? I just listen to music. I said, great. I know where you read, your CD cases. And he said, really? And I said, yeah, take one out. Look at what's on that CD case. And it's a list of songs. And then he had one that had a folder that described the artist, it described how they wrote the songs and all of that. I said, your first job is to write me a CD label. And he said, I can do that in a writing class? Yeah, please, do that. So there's lots of challenges out there. I also have the student, the first grader, that looks at me and he says, no. And there's that challenge out there. So some of the ones that you've written down is finding a topic to write about or beginning a required essay. That's a hard one. It's a hard one. We're going to talk about that if you want to. Identifying with the topic. Couldn't see the relevance of the writing. That is something that's really important, is that we find the relevance, that these kids want to do it. That young man with the CD case, writing finally became relevant to him. At the end of the semester, he brought back a 3-page essay to me and said, look what I did. And it wasn't for a class. It was for a counseling session. He wrote to his counselor. Shocked.
Yeah.
Totally shocked. Ideas. Coming up with ideas. That's a hard one, but we'll look at some ideas. Trying to get them to revise. Oh, yes.
They want the first draft to be
done.
Yeah. I'm done. I'm done. I don't want to touch it again.
Mine's the same one.
Is it?
The end.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Getting kids to realize they will revise and edit a rough draft. One of the things that I found in this writing tutorial that really stood out to me was that I could not have them revise every piece that they wrote. And when they had ownership about which piece they're going to revise, they were a lot more willing to do so. We would do a daily write for 3 minutes, and I would put up a prompt with 2 or 3 options for the students to do. And one of the options was a topic of your choice. Because it was a writing tutorial, I didn't have to stick to a content area or something like that. But some of these kids come in and they're just angry with the world. And they do not want to sit down and just write about whatever I tell them to. Their world is so out of control that they need to have something that they can say, okay, I can do this because it's meaningful to me. So I just opened up a bridge, a little bit of a door for them to say, you're interested in me, that I'm having a bad day and I can write this down. And I would always tell them, if you don't want me to read it, it's okay. You can fold over that page in your journal, and I won't even look at it. If you need to tape it, you can do that. But get those ideas down on paper. If you do want me to read it, fold down the ear on the journal and write, read. Because I would go through the journals and make comments to them, validating that their ideas were good, that I had a question to them, and I'd only do it probably once a week. Because, well, I had a small group like this, so I could get to it more than once a week. But if I did it every day, they'd expect it every day. And sometimes as teachers, we don't have that time. That's the reality of it. But the feedback of, I'm interested in your story, was all they needed. And so many times the kids are writing this narrative or this expository writing, and they bring it to us and they say, will you read it? And what they want is for us to say, hey, I really like what you said right here. But our mindset is often, you didn't put punctuation. Where are your capitals? What's happening here? Your ideas are all confusing to me. We go towards that negative immediately. And some of our kids can handle it. But those aren't the ones that need the motivation. The ones that need the motivation are the ones that are saying, I don't want to do this. I am not a writer, and I'm not going to be. And so, one of the things, as we think about this, we can go through these, and I want you to think about it. What was your most challenging moment as a writer? So my most memorable, and it doesn't have to be challenging, but my most memorable writing experience. It could be your best or your worst time in your life. I'm going to have you think about that or talk about it. Keeping them focused on their ideas. Huge. Understanding organization, sentence structure, and mechanics, and how important they are. Okay, and one last one. Lack of handwriting skills. Oh no, I can read it. All right, these are all great. We're going to come back to them, but I want you to write about your most memorable moment as a writer. Very good. another minute and finish up your thought. Continue. Is there anybody that would be willing to share out their thoughts about your most memorable time as a writer? Okay.
Well, we were talking, and I'm one of the people who wrote about students struggling to revise their papers.
Very good.
So I was one of those kids. When I went to college, I thought that I was a perfect writer. I've always been talented at BSing my way through things and thought that this gift would get me through college just as it had high school. Wrong. I encountered Susan Frey, and she gave me a C on my first paper. Then she taught me that I needed to revise my work, not just worry about mechanics.
One of the things I've done with the students is I've given them a bookmark to put in their journal. And I don't know how many of you dealt with the 6 traits, but we've at least heard different parts of the 6 traits. And it's a self-checklist for the kids. Are my thoughts organized? Do I have good ideas happening? Do my sentences fit together? Have I got a thesis statement, if that's what it was? Do I have a conclusion? Have I placed the setting? And just so that I don't even have to go to them, that I can with their journal, and I can say, have you got all of these things? And it can be specific. If it's in a content area and you're working on a compare and contrast, you can have specific things that you're looking for in that writing. Taking it from the rubric, but making it smaller so the kids can actually go to it and revise. We know we want them to do conventions. And that's always one that I put on there. Have you checked for your capitalization? Have you put in punctuation? I have these run-on sentences that are this long. You know? And the kids look at me and they go, well, I didn't have time to put it in. I was hurrying. I had all these great ideas. Okay, now I would like you to go back and let me take a pause. Because I can't talk like this all day long, and I can't take. And they're going, oh, that's what it's all about. Putting a pause in there for you. I can't read it without it. Okay. Does that give you an idea of what maybe you could do to go back? Because there are so many times the kids just think, I don't know how to spell this, so I can't check the spelling. The spelling's not the most important thing, but we'll work on that. But I need to know if you've got the ideas that you want. And depending on the topic and the word wall I put up, we'll bounce off of those kind of ideas and have a bookmark that we can both look at while we're revising, having a conference. Okay, anybody else?
I think I had a real positive professor and some professors that created a real negative for me. The most positive one was my creative writing professor, and he would show me where I messed up, you know. But at the same time, he would give me this really positive feedback on things he really liked, and then on my other papers and my other English classes, I would get no feedback, almost always.
So feedback
no
is
comments,
huge.
nothing, just a grade. And it might be even a good grade, really good grade. But I never knew what was good about it. Or it might be not an A, it might be a B. But what caused it to be a B? And I wanted to know, so I didn't do the same thing the next time.
Exactly.
And so what that sadly has turned me into as a teacher, and I've had to try for as long as I've taught, and it still isn't working too well, is to not write so copiously on my students' papers, because it's still this thing that goes back in my mind too. I hated not getting comments. I hated not, because I wanted to know what I did not, you know.
Right.
And so that is a constant battle I fight with myself, is not everyone was you, is you like you were. You know, some of them don't need 500 comments all over their papers.
They might not need 500, but they
so
need you.
just because you wanted to know all this information you didn't get back then. So that was the negative for me. It wasn't always the grade as much as it was, okay, why?
But you have some insight that you just shared with the rest of us that we may not have. And that is, there's so many kids that are out there that want that feedback. You know, and are we giving it to them? Do we know which ones need the feedback and which ones can take the grade and go?
You've got to build that trust in your classroom before you can give them feedback. They have to know that we're all in this together. It's a community of learners, because it can go either way, just like you
Yes,
said.
it can. It can totally do both.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally agree with you.
Yeah. So that's,
And like him, what was so wonderful about him is he could show me mistakes, and he could give me the negative, if you want to call it feedback, but turn right around and say, oh, this is incredible right here.
mm-hmm.
On the other hand, too,
Yes.
you know, he would give me both. I would get both from him. And it was, you know, it was like, I'd get the aha when he pointed out how I could improve this the next time. So it was like, really.
Let's share a couple more. Anybody?
Well,
Okay.
I have my best moment
Okay.
was when I was actually doing my Michigan certificate examination in Brazil for proficiency examination, right? And I just wrote flow because I knew about the topic. I loved the topic. It was about education, and it just came to me, like I couldn't stop writing, and I aced the test.
Very
and
good.
then I feel like sometimes when you allow your students to do the same, to write about something they're really passionate about, you're gonna get great stuff. Like it's
Definitely.
just the flow, just it's incredible. And then I feel like sometimes when I'm assigning some kind of writing task, I really want them to write about anything they're passionate about.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. And one of the, or a couple of the comments here was, how do I find a topic? How do I choose what to have them write on? We know that we have to meet certain criteria. We know that we have to have them write for specific reasons. But so many times we close our minds to this one prompt. Describe Mount Vernon. Well, I've never seen Mount Vernon. I don't know if it's a tall mountain. I don't know what state it's in. All these questions are going through him. But if I said, describe a mountain, just taking out a little bit of it, I still have the context of that prompt, but the student is able to give me more information. Now, as a teacher, if we were talking about Mount Vernon, we would have pictures up, we would have drawn a map of that area, we would have done all of these things before they wrote to build that background knowledge, because I know that many of our students don't have this information stored away yet. And those are high school students I'm talking about, because they haven't traveled anywhere outside of the city, or they haven't traveled anywhere outside of the state. So I have to take them to those places through pictures or sounds or whatever it is. And once I open that up, then they're more willing to write. So yes, you had the writing experience because you had a connection with the topic. So finding something for them to do, one of the things I do when they're having a day, I can't write. I don't know what to write about. Say, okay, open up your journal to a new page. You're going to dog-ear this page, and you're going to write topics. And then just list some of the things that have happened in your life, list some of the places you've been, list your favorite birthday, list, if I'm talking about geography, what was your favorite place to go? If I'm talking about math, what was the most interesting math problem you just finished? If I'm talking about science, what do you want to know more about? You get them thinking about something outside of themselves. That I found when they have this list in their journal and they get stuck on those days, they can go back to it. It's their ideas. They're taking control of it now. They fit into my topic. If I'm a science teacher, I'm going to have science topics. If I'm a math teacher, I'm going to have math topics. But I know I want them to write eventually. And so they can choose one of those. And that may not have been my topic for that day, but I haven't got them to shut completely down now. I've got them to say, okay, I can take some ownership in this. I like this one. This is my topic. Anybody else? Another? No? Oh, that's all right.
I'll share, when we were in Frey, we were doing the writing marathon, which you guys are going to be participating in this afternoon, which is a great experience. There was a mother that brought her son along. He was, it wasn't the same kiddo that Amy was talking about this morning. He was a different kiddo. He was probably about a similar age. So I had written a piece about motivating boys in, because he was with us, and then there was a high school boy that was with us that had gone along. And the high school he saw himself as a writer, was trying to get published on Amazon and stuff. Where this other little kid, this was very hard for him to participate in. So I just wrote about motivating boys in my classroom. And I wrote this question, do boys write because they want to write? You know, and I'm talking about the boys in my classroom. And I teach first graders. Do they write because they want to write, or are they writing because they want to go to recess? And he said, I want to, because they want to go to recess. And it was just so honest and touching right there at that moment that, and he did not, he would write one or two sentences and then shut down physically and start wandering. So it was very telling about, one, the writing that he's been doing throughout his school life. And it was just kind of sad.
Yeah.
But I so appreciate his honesty.
You bet. It's very real. They do it because I have to. Anybody else? We've only got a couple more minutes. I'm just going to share my most memorable moment was, as a writer, was when I joined the Wyoming Writing Project. I was a novice writer, sitting with script writers, published novelists, and English teachers. What was I going to be able to bring to this table? One of the men had published several scripts that had been televised. One of them several of them had written novels. And here I was just wanting to do better for my students. I've probably written more this year, and almost all of it's professionally, than I have in a long time. I'm not a very creative-minded person. I'm more of an expository type writer. I can remember writing an autobiography when I was in 6th grade because it meant something to me. I'd never looked at where it came from, who I was, and what kind of things were going on around me. But those are memorable times. And we don't think of autobiographies very much anymore. We read them once in a while, but as far as telling our story, that's private. And that's one of the things with writing. It becomes a very private moment to these kids. Maybe they need to write down their feelings that day. I can't write very good, so I don't want you to see it, because I have lots of mistakes in my writing. Just being afraid to do it wrong. And where has that come from? Because I see first graders coming up with this. I see third graders coming up with it. I see high school kids shutting down. And why? We haven't made it meaningful to them. And so, one of the things, I knew I was going to have a short time. I put together a little bit of information. There's a few websites that I've gone to get information about motivating students. There's a few ideas about when these students just want to shut down on us, some of the causes that might be there for them shutting down, and then some ideas of how to bring them back. I don't ascribe to being an expert in this field, but I know that I've had some success. And some of the avoidances I've had have been breaking a pencil, not just the lead, but just coming up and going, boom, I'm not going to write. You give them a new pencil, boom, I'm not going to write. And so you just say, okay, so let me write down some of your ideas for you. Pretty soon their ideas are meaningful. If you want to write down my ideas, that's something important. I have no ideas. That list. Spelling, a topic word wall works really well for a lot of those kids. Distractions. Sometimes we have those days where the moon is still up there or something's going crazy in the atmosphere. Those are the days we need to have a turn and talk. Tell me about the story you've just written. Tell me about the story I need you to write. But turn and talk to your neighbor. Make it a dual, and then make it a small group. And then those that want to go into the large group, share them with the large group. I was in a 5th grade class, and these students did not want to share their writing. I can't write very good. And so the teacher and I said, well, okay, let's start small. And so we had them share in pairs. And then pretty soon that wasn't enough. I want to share with my table. Okay, let's go there. Does one person out of the table want to tell us about your story? And pretty soon the hands kept going up. Can I share mine? But at the same time, the most important part of this whole thing was I was up on that whiteboard writing my own story, making mistakes on purpose, so that they would see that it's okay to make a mistake while they're writing. And they would correct my writing. Tell me that wasn't a learning experience for them. They were excited that I found the teacher's mistake.
And they love that.
They do love to correct you. Yeah. So, being innovative about it. I just put in a few inspiring ideas. Making a newspaper. I had a 3rd grader write a reader's theater last year.
Awesome.
It was incredible. And it was off of the novel that we were reading together. But she just loved the theater stuff. And she said, I want to write more. Well, I went online, and I found some examples of Rita's theater. We erased the part that they had and put in hers. And it's published in the center downstairs. But being innovative, finding those fun ideas to make them want to write. A narrative gets tiring. How many of us have written 20 narratives and said, do I have to write another one? Please don't make me. But writing a newspaper article and publishing them all together. Having a class newspaper. Different things like that. Provide a meaningful purpose for writing. Like practicing writing as a character in a story, describing a setting or an object, describing a problem or a solution, and have one kid write down the problem and another one come up with a solution for it. Anyway, I knew we wouldn't get to all of this, so I had to put it down for you. Hopefully there's something you can use.
I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Lynette Parker.
Oh, yes.